What up, everyone? How's everyone doing? Good? Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming today. Today, I'm going to be talking about the web for all the power of progressive web applications. Has anyone here worked with progressive web apps before? Raise your hand. So I assume that you think they're cool. That's the reason why you're here. So hopefully my presentation doesn't suck. So if I messed up, just let me know. So thank you so much to my employer, OneSignal, for paying all the travel and expenses and give me the time to prepare for this talk. And if you don't like it, send them an email and be like, hey, this guy sucks, fire him, okay? That URL right there, it's a URL for our developer community. It's free. If you want to join, we have a Discord server channel, and we talk about JavaScript, Java, Android, iOS, and everything around tech. So feel free to check it out. So who's that guy right there? That happens to be me. My name is Patricio Vargas, but Patricio is just too complex to pronounce, so people call me Pato. I'm a Google developer expert in web technologies. I'm also a member of the Auth0 Ambassador Program. I'm a Postman Supernova, Twilio champion, AWS community builder, Google Woman Tech Maker, and I'm part of the media developer expert at Cloudinary as well. So Pato, it actually means duck, quack, quack. So yeah, feel free to call me that way. So basically, back at home, if your name is Patricio, they call you Pato. It's like Michael Mike, but yeah, that's what it is. So who knows what a PWA is? Raise your hand. Okay, 1, 2, 3, like 10 guys. Awesome, that's perfect. So a progressive web application stands for PWA, right? Progressive web apps are applications that have the ability to install in a device, right? It could be an iPad, could be an iOS phone, could be an Android, could be your actual Mac or a Windows machine as well. But in my personal point of view, progressive web applications are web apps with superpowers. So who uses PWAs? Tinder uses PWAs, Microsoft, Starbucks, Google, Samsung, and so many other companies. So if you ever wonder what other companies, like big companies, use PWAs, check out this website. It's called PWAstats.com. And if I go over here, they actually talk about their success stories using PWAs, which is really cool. And you scroll down, you can see the success study from Starbucks, Lyft, which is another popular company. And for example, let's look at the one for Lyft. It says, users on older devices take 11% more rides in Lyft PWAs than the ones using the native application, which is actually very impressive in my personal point of view. Install PWA 3% more often than downloading the app. So once again, PWAs are winning. Now, for example, the one from Starbucks, it says, the Starbucks PWA has increased daily active users ×2, orders on desktops, and nearly the same as mobile devices, which is actually very impressive. I would think that everyone is on their phone and just like buying coffee, but I guess people are like working from home and they just do it through their machine. So next time you're swiping right on Tinder and you see your ex, thank PWAs because it's possible thanks to the progressive web applications. So yeah, what are some of the power of progressive web apps? I'm gonna wait for a friend, take a seat, feel comfy. Just take your time, no problem. So what are some of the superpowers of progressive web applications? So who has used progressive web apps again? You, okay, can you tell me one? Boom, right there, killing it. That's perfect. But there's more superpowers, right? Like I was telling you before, they have the ability to be installed. They're SEO friendly. They're push notification friendly. They're extremely performant. They provide great user experience. They provide the offline experience as well, payment processing, and they're multi-platform, meaning they can install in different devices like I was telling you. So not everything is perfect with PWAs. I love them and they are amazing, but of course they are disadvantages, and I don't think it will be fair for me to talk about PWAs without telling you the downsides, right? So one of the downsides is, if I compare it to a native application, is that they have less access to system features, right? Progressive web apps, they're growing a lot, and every day there are improvements, and I feel like one day they're just gonna become like regular native apps. That's my personal point of view. There's not such a review standard. And what do I mean with that? Whenever you build a native application, right, you have to submit it to the Apple Store or the Google Play, and then there's this guy somewhere, and then they say yay or nay to your application, meaning that we like it to be on our store, or we don't like it, right? So there's no such a thing with progressive web applications. The same way you have a regular website, is the same way that you're gonna publish it and nobody reviews it. Nobody says, hey, this is awesome, we're gonna host it in GoDaddy. The same happens with PWAs. You can like have it hosted anywhere and nobody gives you the yay or the nay. And also, Apple needs to catch up with tech. What do I mean with that? I don't know if there's any Apple fans right here, so I'm just gonna apologize in advance if you're an Apple fan, but they don't move as fast as other companies like Google or Microsoft when it comes to progressive web applications, right? Why? Because they kind of like to control everything, and since there's not such a review standard with progressive web applications, they don't have the control. That's why they don't like it that much. And I'm gonna give you an example. So if you're trying to submit a push notification, right, and you have a website and you're using an iPhone, you're not gonna get the push notification if you're subscribing into a web app. If you have the native application, yes, you're gonna get a notification, but not if you're subscribing into the website. Now there's a new feature that is coming up with a new version of iPhone, which the push notifications are gonna work, but it's been taking them forever. So just keep that in mind. So now, why I fell in love with progressive web applications. So this is a true story. So back in the days, I used to do consulting for a very, very big company that is actually worldwide. And now, thanks to progressive web applications, the company is in over 120 countries. Why? Because a lot of the countries that are that have customers for my previous client, they are in countries that are currently developing, right? And what does that mean? That means that they probably don't have a great internet connection. And that's when progressive web applications come into play. Why? Because they're extremely performant, right? So if they're extremely performant, that means that if your internet connection is not as great, then their website is still gonna load fast and the user experience is gonna be great. And if your website doesn't load within 3 seconds, the probability of you losing 50% of your users is pretty high. And that's just not me just saying a random number. Google decided to do some research, so you can look it up. Now, thanks to progressive web applications, my client was able to reduce their server calls by 32%. Why? Because some caching strategies. They also increased the user experience, like I was telling you, and now the company by 2019 was making over $8.8 billion in sales. The progressive web application is loading around roughly 3 seconds, which is great. And now 1 out of 5 Americans have products from my client. So I think there's like 50 people here, so do the math. So thank you guys for buying products from my client. I appreciate you. So cool story, bro. Hopefully you liked it. Hopefully it touched your heart. And now you're falling in love with progressive web applications as well. But that's not all. Let's talk about the main components of a progressive web application. What makes a progressive web application a PWA, right? So the main components of a PWA are the manifest, the service worker, and the regular web application, right? So this website that you see right here is this beautiful Nike store that I decided to create. I love Nikes. If you happen to have a gift card or something like that, sponsor me some Nikes, no problem. Actually, I really like this pair right here, so just keep in mind, take a picture, look it up, and send it to me. Anyways, so what is the manifest.json? The manifest.json is just a regular JSON file, right? And this file has the characteristics of how your PWA is going to look like. It's going to give the touch and feel of a native application. So yes, you're still going to be using CSS, but this manifest.json is going to tell your device the following. What is going to be the starting URL on how your website is going to load when you first open it, right? Because, I mean, most likely you want to start your progressive web application in the home page, but if you want to do it in the login page or in the about page, you're more than welcome to do that as well. Thanks to the manifest.json, you can specify what kind of icon you want the person to see on their device when they install your PWA, right? And depends on the size of the device, you're gonna put the icon size as well. So as you can see, I'm specifying the sizes right here. And then I have the name of my application, which is Create React App Sample. And then, but like I said, you can name it however you want. And then the theme color, and then you can specify the splash screen as well, right? So whenever you have a native application and you open it, most likely you're gonna have a splash screen with like a color or a logo or something like that. You can do that with progressive web applications as well. Why? Because you want your PWA to look and feel like a native web app, like a native application, I'm sorry. And then, well, basically, thanks to the manifest.json, you're going to have the ability to install this PWA in your machine. If you do not have the manifest.json, you are not going to be able to install it in your machine. So far, so good? Yay. OK, thank you. So service workers. Has anyone worked with a service worker before? OK, so pay attention to the following because service workers are actually very complex. So just be aware of that. If you have any questions, just be like, hey, Pato, I don't know what you're saying, so feel free to interrupt me because things are gonna get a little bit ugly. So a service worker is essentially a JavaScript file, right? But it doesn't live in your website. It actually lives in your browser, right? So separately from your browser, it lives in the background. So basically, the service worker is gonna be it's just gonna be chilling. It's gonna be asleep, and whenever something triggers one of the service worker superpowers, it's gonna wake up, and then it's gonna do whatever you're telling the service worker to do. So here's your application, right? And then you have the service worker, like I was telling you, in the browser, and then your service worker is gonna live between your network and your cache. Why? Because your service worker is gonna help you create some caching strategies. So what can a service worker do? Well, a service worker can cache network requests, can handle how you're going to handle the network request, is going to help you work offline with your application. Why? Because you're caching things, right? Thanks to the service worker, you can cache assets like images, you can cache JavaScript files, CSS files, HTML files, and so on. Also, thanks to the service worker, you can use the background sync API, which is a very cool API. Basically, the background sync API allows you to interact with your website like if you were online. Meaning, let's pretend that you have a website because you are a professor at a university, right? But you decided to go to the mountains for the weekend and you don't have internet connection. So that happens that you want to submit the grades, you want to put an F to Pato because he sucks, and so you're going to put the F, and then if you don't have a progressive web application, a service worker, and the background sync API, your data is not going to sync, right? So thanks to the background sync API and the service worker, you're going to be able to give me the F, and then you're going to go back to your home on Monday, and then it happens that now you have internet connection, so the background sync API is going to detect that, and it's going to submit the server calls for you. You don't have to do it manually. They're just going to be in the background chilling, and they're going to be like, oh my God, we have internet, yay. Sends them up, and everything is back to normal. It's pretty cool. And thanks to the service workers, you have the ability to receive push notifications as well. So that's pretty cool. So working with service workers. So the first thing that you have to do is register the service worker. It's good practice to check if service workers are compatible with your navigator. So the first thing that I recommend you to do, just grab the registration with an if statement, and then load the service worker, right? And as you can see, I have this window event listener load, and the load basically tells the web app, hey, load everything, and once everything has been loaded, now load the service worker. This is going to help you for just for performance. If you don't want to do the wrapper of the load, you don't have to do it, but I recommend you to do it because it's good practice. And then as you can see, I have the navigator, then I'm registering my service worker, which I named it sw.js. SW stands for service worker, and it's living in the root of my project. Keep in mind that you have to have it in the root. If you don't have the service worker in your root, it's not gonna work. Now, I have seen a lot of people trying to have multiple service workers in the root, so that's not gonna work. Web applications can only have one service worker. Is it possible to have more than one? Yes. What you have to do is actually combine them into one. So you can have the service workers in like separate folders, and then you combine them into the one in the root. So that's the trick. So yeah, then you register it and you're good to go. And then one of the life cycles of a service worker is installing it. So first you register it, and then you install the service worker. Whenever you're installing the service worker, right, you are gonna open the cache, and you are gonna tell your application what are the files that you want to cache. So as you can see, I'm opening the cache, which is a promise, and then I'm passing the cache name, and you can name it however you want, doesn't matter. And after that, you're gonna tell the cache what are the files that you want to cache. And this is gonna be an array. Why? Because you can cache more than one file. So far, so good? Yeah? Awesome. So now, intercepting server calls. This is super important, so pay attention to this. Whenever you're working with the service workers, you want to use them to cache your assets. That way you can make your progressive web application more performant. So what I recommend you to do is you have the request, right? And then you try to look for that request in your cache. So this is what I'm doing right here. I'm trying to match my request to the things that I have in my cache. If that request exists in my cache, that means that I'm not gonna be loading things from the server, I'm gonna be loading things from my cache. So this is why I have this code right here. So basically, if I found a resource, if it's good in my cache, I'm not gonna make the server call, right? So if it doesn't exist, I'm gonna make the server call. So if you're not loading things from the server, everything comes from the cache, and if you're loading things from the cache, your application is more performant. So far, so good? Awesome. Like I said, like the code can be a little bit ugly, but that's the way to do it. So another life cycle of the service worker is the activate service worker. The activate service worker has the power of manipulating your application, and this is what this code essentially does. So you can have more than one cache, right? You can have different versions. You can have version 1, version 2, version 3, and so on. The problem is that our browser has a memory size. So you shouldn't be caching everything, and then you shouldn't be having multiple versions of cache. Why? Because one day you're not gonna have enough memory in your browser. So what is good practice is to compare the current version of your cache to the old version of your cache and remove the old version. So let's pretend that you have version 1.0, and then you decided to add a new file that you want to cache, and then you're gonna change the version of the cache from version 1 to version 2. Since now you have the version 2, you're gonna remove version 1, and I'm gonna show you how that works in actual real life. So let's walk through the code. As you can see, I'm looking through all the caches that I have, because like I was telling you, you can have more than one. and then I'm iterating through the list of caches that I have, and I'm comparing each key to the current cache name that I have in this part right here. If they're not the same, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove the old cache and I'm gonna leave the new cache in my browser only. So far so good? It's a bit complex? No? Yeah? Okay. So this is essentially what it's doing. You have the service worker, you have to install it, like I was telling you, and then it goes through the activate state, right? And then goes through the cache and then looks for the old cache and sends it to the trash can. So you don't have to think about it anymore. So FYI, here's a link. If you want to know more about the life cycle of activating a service worker, you can check it out. So some of the caching strategies with service workers, there's more than one. Depending on your scenario, that's how you're going to be working with the caching strategies. So a popular one is cache failing back to network. So you have your website, right? And then it's going to go to the server, to the service worker, and it's going to look for the assets or the images or the JavaScript files in your cache. If they don't exist, then I'm going to hit the network. Once it hits the network, then I'm gonna send information back into your website. That's one. That's a very popular one. So here's another one. The network failing back to cache. So once again, you have your website, goes through the service worker. I try to go to the network, and it happens that I don't have internet connection. What I'm gonna be doing, because I want to keep using my website, I rely on my cache, grab my assets from my cache, sends them back into my website. You can take a picture. Good, awesome. And then cache, then network. This is another popular as well. Once again, you have your page, goes to your cache. As you can see, I go to my cache, I send the information back into my website, and then goes to the service worker and makes the connection into the network, and then puts it into the cache as well. Why? Because it can happen that you update data, right? So you don't want to keep having old data in your cache. Like I said, depends on the scenarios that you want to have. So grab the data from the cache for performance, and then go to the service worker, intercept the network call, grab new data, you want to cache it, and then send it back to your page. So now let's look at the demo. So I have this beautiful website, like I was telling you about. It's just like a shopping website, and one of the first things that you're going to notice is this icon right here. This icon gives you the ability to install the progressive web application in your device. So if I click in here, it's just going to say my PWAs, and then I'm going to click install. I'm not going to do it yet because I have more things to demo, but I'm eventually going to do it. Another thing that you want to do is if you go to the Google DevTools, you're going to see this tab right here that says application. And basically, you're going to see the manifest. This is the manifest.json file that I was telling you about. You can see the start URL, and you can see the icons that I put into my progressive web application. So now when I install my progressive web application, this is the icon that I'm going to see in my device. The other thing that I'm going to see right here instead of the applications tab is the service worker. You can see the name of my service worker, which is awesome. Then you're going to have the service worker right here. It gives you the error right now because I was doing things offline, but it's actually like working. I'll show you how. What else? Then let's see if I'm going to actually refresh the page because I cleared all the information, and you can see that everything is working now, right? If I go to my cache, I can see everything that I have cached, which are my images for my beautiful Nikes that you guys are buying me. This is version 1.0. If I go to storage, I can see my cache, my service workers, and all the information that I essentially have for my website that is being stored. If you're working with the service workers and you're testing things out, I recommend you to clear the site data, because since you're caching things, you're gonna see old data. If you don't wanna see it anymore, just make sure to clear that. So, another cool thing is, if you go to the Google DevTools, you can click on the Network tab, right? And then you can see how everything is coming from the fetch. You know, everything is being fetched right now. Why? Because at that moment, I didn't have anything cached. And as you can see, it's telling me the size. So 288 bytes and so on. What happens if I click on this tab right here that says trolling, and then I click offline? So I'm going to refresh my page. And that means if I'm clicking offline, that means that my application is actually working offline. So you don't need to go to your Wi-Fi settings and click disconnect or just unplug your Ethernet cable. You can just go here and click offline, or you can click on slow 3G or fast 3G, and that helps you test your application. So as you can see, now it's not giving me the bytes, right? Now it's telling me service worker. Why? Because the service worker is handling where the assets are coming from, which in this case are stored in my cache. So far, so good? Awesome. So I'm gonna click right here, and I click install. And now this is my PWA. It's actually installed in my device. I can see this icon right here, which is awesome. And as you can see, the navigation is black. And that's why I specify that in my manifest.json. And it opened up in my index.html. Why? Because I specify that as well in my manifest.json. So I'm gonna uninstall this. Okay. And then I'm gonna go to the code, right? So like I was telling you before, I have my cache name. And as you saw, it was the version 1.0. And then I have all the assets that I want to cache. This sucks because you have to do it manually. There's a new library called Workbox that helps you do all this ugly process in a very easy way, just with a few lines of code. I'm not gonna be talking about Workbox, because I just don't have time, but just keep that in mind that there's a tool that helps you do all this in a very easy way. So let's open the website again. Okay, then I'm gonna go to application. Like I was telling you, I have my cache name version 1.0, and then if I click on my cache, I'm caching the 6 images, which are these ones right here. And then if I change this to version 2.0 and I remove this, what do you think is gonna happen? Anyone has an idea? No? Okay, well, no problem. So I'm gonna save this, then I'm gonna go back, and as you can see, my cache name changed to version 2.0, and I don't have my image 6 cache. So as you can see, I'm using the activate lifecycle method to remove my old cache and make any changes to the cache that I want. So we can actually put it back, and then, did I save it? Yeah. Does it load? Oh, I named it the same, you see? My bad. Okay, so version 1.0, and now I have the asset right here. The one that I wasn't caching before, now it's been cached. So, so as you can see, this is a regular application. I don't have anything crazy. I don't have anything really with Webpack. Everything is just this JavaScript file, right, that is telling the navigator to load my service worker, and I have my service worker inside of my root folder, and this JavaScript file is the one that has all the lifecycle methods that I was telling you about. So this code right here that you're seeing is the same ones that you saw in the slides. And so yeah, any questions so far? No? Okay, awesome. So with that being said, here's the manifest.json. I'm specifying the color, like I was telling you, color black. I'm sorry, the background color, the theme color. And then as you can see, you can have more than one icon size. Why? Because you have different mobile devices with different sizes, right? So just keep that in mind as well. Another good thing to do with the progressive web applications is to have a robots file and a sitemap. Why? Because they're going to help you with SEO. And that's one of the advantages of progressive web applications compared to native applications, because they are SEO friendly. Why? Because at the end of the day, they are a regular website with superpowers. So I'm just going to give you an example. Let's pretend that you have this store actually working. If you have a native application, there's no way that one of your users goes into Google and looks for the item 1. It's just not going to appear there. Why? Because native applications are not SEO friendly. So if you have a progressive web application, you can do SEO on this item, and they're going to appear on Google. Right? So that's one of the coolest advantages that I see, and that's how a lot of the e-commerce websites are growing right now. If you're using Shopify and WordPress, which are very popular sites to create e-commerce websites, they have plugins that will convert your your web application into a progressive web application. So even if you're someone that is not technical, there's a solution for you. That's why I like to call these progressive web applications are for everyone. First of all, because you don't have to worry about you having technical knowledge. If you're using a no-code solution, you can still convert your application into a progressive web app. And if you are in a place without good internet connection, you can still access the website. So PWAs are for everyone. With that being said, anyone has any questions? No? Then you check if we have any questions on Slack. Okay, cool. So let's see. One website that I recommend you to go is this one right here. This is a website created by Google. These guys decided to teach people about progressive web applications. And a lot of the images that I got from my slides, which are these ones right here, I got them from theweb.dev. So shout out to the Google team. And as you can see, I put the website right there. And so feel free to check it out. Other than that, I'm just going to go back to this part right here. And thank you so much for coming to my talk. Hopefully my presentation wasn't terrible. And if you have any questions, raise your hand. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you.
I didn't put a couple things together.
Yeah.
I didn't quite get, like, the JavaScript you wrote. Is that only executed if you have the manifest.json?
No. They will still be run. Why? Because that's a great question. You can have an application with a service worker, but if you have an application with a service worker without the manifest, it's not a PWA. Because remember, a few minutes ago, I was telling you the components of a PWA. It was the manifest.json, the service worker, and the actual web app. So you can still use the service worker even if you don't have a progressive web application. So all you have to do is just in the regular JavaScript file, you're going to have to load your service worker. This file right here that you see, this file is actually going to live on your website. The service worker is going to live in the browser. Did I answer your question?
Yep.
Awesome.
So is it the manifest.json that actually makes it installable from the browser?
Yes. So actually, we can probably test it out. Hopefully, I don't break the demo. So let's see. If I break it, I'm just gonna blame you. So let's see. So as you can see, we have the icon right here, right? This icon gives me the ability to install this PWA into my website. So let's see what happens if I'm actually gonna clear the site information because everything is gonna be cached. And okay, I don't have internet, great, of course. You see, be careful with that. Okay, so here's my site, and I don't have the icon anymore. So you see they're independent from each other. I still have my service worker. I just don't have my manifest. Right, so if I refresh this, and I go to the network, I still have my things. They're not being cached right now. Okay, I know why it's not being cached. So if I go here, it's because it's failing because it's looking for this file. And since I don't have it, then nothing's gonna work. So you can definitely handle that kind of scenarios, but just for these demo purposes, I didn't handle that. So since it's looking for a file that didn't exist, then it's breaking. More questions? Okay, cool.
What low-code, no-code solutions are there for PWAs, a portfolio site, for example?
Okay, so the question was what no-code solutions are out there that are PWA friendly, progressive web application friendly, essentially. WordPress, Shopify, and that's are the only ones that I know of. So for example, Webflow is not gonna work because Webflow allows you to upload JavaScript files if you have a paid version of Webflow. The problem is that the files that you upload are gonna live on your site, not on the browser. So you're not gonna have the ability to upload a service worker, and that service worker is gonna live on the browser. It's just not gonna work. So just keep that in mind. Anything else?
Do you have a constant list of files to cache there? Can you just as easily make that dynamic?
You can't. Yeah, that's why Workbox, which actually I'm gonna, now that we have time, you can just Workbox. Yeah. Open source, easy to use. So basically, everything that I showed you, they condense that into a few lines of code. So this, like, the problem with service workers is that they're extremely powerful, they're awesome, but they are very fragile as well. So, and so you see, as you can see, just with a few lines of code, you can have your service workers already set up for you. So definitely check this out, Workbox. It works with Angular, it works with React, Vue, regular web apps, you name it, it works with them. And let me see if I find the code that, let's see. Cache files. Okay. So you see, like right now, this is essentially all the code that you need to start using the Workbox. And it's essentially telling, hey, these are the things that I need, this is what I'm looking for, and where's my service worker located. So as you can see, it's definitely condensed in just a few lines of code. Cache, let's see. So for example, you have runtime caching, and you can even put regex patterns, and you can tell, hey, I want to cache all my images that end with JPEG or PNG, and it will handle that for you. Someone else had a question over there. Was it you? No? You have more? Okay.
Can you think of an example or examples of sites where you wouldn't recommend PWA, or in your opinion, do you think that all new sites should potentially look at this as a possibility?
So I'm nobody, FYI, but there's a guy from Google that he suggests that every website should be a PWA. Like I said, I forgot his name, but somewhere in the web.dev, he talks about it. Why? Because you want your applications to be user-friendly, you increase the user experience, and you want them to be performant, and PWAs help you with that. So why not? I mean, they're not gonna hurt you, so might as well just use it, and it's free.
For especially offline functionality, like say you've got web requests that are authenticated with the token for the user that's logged into your applications. When you're offline, you're using like a background sync process.
Can you speak a little bit louder?
Sure. So in terms of like offline functionality and authentication, what's the best practice if you wanted to like sync information offline when you come back online?
Background sync API.
Yeah. But you're authenticating with a user who's been offline for like, we'll say an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever authentication tokens you have tied to that user might be expired.
So you will have to handle that kind of scenario, right? So something that you can do is have the information like saved, right, in your cache, and then whenever you go back online, then you're probably gonna have to ask the user, hey, authenticate again, and if they authenticate again, then you check the token and then try to match it. Let's pretend that you have some data saved under user A, right? And then you go back online, thanks to the background sync API, is gonna grab that data, grab the new token, and be like, okay, is this token for user A? It is. Is this data corresponds to the user A? Then send it back to the server. Is that good? Yeah. Okay, perfect. Anyone else?
This background syncing, at what schedule does it run?
You can configure that as well, but like for example, you can put it like to check like every hour and so on, or just check by default.
I got a use case that I kind of envision this being useful for, but I'm not clear at all. Like what, the use case is that, okay, you've got something on your website that's post-authentication that takes a little while to generate, and you want to improve that by being able to anticipate when they might need that information. And I thought, so I guess one thing in order to help, when it does the background syncing, does it send the cookies?
It doesn't send the cookies?
Does it send the cookies?
Well, it sends the information that you wanted to send into your server.
So if you had a cookie there that you could correlate to the user that's not a login cookie, you could use that on your back end.
Yeah.
Okay. But then you would need, you would have to know for yourself the frequency of when they're actually, if they're only access, let's say the data changes daily, but they only go to it weekly. There's nothing the browser can do to help you understand that, right?
No, so basically what's gonna happen is I'm working offline, and then I take my computer, let's say back into the office. Now I have internet connection. You're gonna refresh the page, and or it's just gonna depend on how you use the background sync API, or you can put it to keep trying to detect internet connection, then try to sync the data. So you can do that. Anyone else? No? I have more questions in the chat? No? Okay. Well, if you don't have any more questions, I'm gonna let you go. Hopefully you liked the talk. Hopefully you learned a lot from PWAs.